let me put my cards on the table. Other cards are available. I have never met any of the family of the late Colonel Gaddafi. Neither have I met the late Colonel. I had nothing to do with the regime in Libya, and I was very far from being a supporter of it. But my view is that the NATO invasion, destruction of Libya has succeeded in making a bad job much, much worse. I have been in Libya more than once during the reign of the late Colonel Gaddafi. I was not impressed, though I recognize that there are people in this audience who were impressed. I recognize also that there were things to be impressed about. But given the smallness of Libya's population and the vast ocean of oil that the country produced, every person in Libya should have been a multi-millionaire and the public realm should have looked like Dubai, and neither of those was true. But the NATO intervention, as they call it, in the civil conflict in Libya has succeeded in transforming what was bad and ramshackle into a million pieces. It's my view that Libya is now no longer a country. It's no longer a state. There are several Libyas. There are several parliaments. There are several governments. There are several prime ministers. But there are no state. There are no security. There are no borders. And that is a catastrophe for the people of Libya and its neighbours, and also for the European Union and its countries, because in blowing away the previous regime in Libya, the doors were blown open and across and through which have come literally millions of refugees who have, if they were lucky in being able to cross the Mediterranean Sea, were left in dire misery. And the rise of populist, anti-immigrant, anti-refugee sentiment in all of the European countries involved, but particularly along the southern lip of the European side of the Mediterranean, is well known, I think, to everyone. So it's my view that the NATO intervention and the NATO-sponsored murder, gruesome murder of the late Colonel Gaddafi have been a catastrophe for Libyans and for everyone else. As to whether Libya will ever be a single country again, I have my doubts. But of one thing I have no doubt. The idea that the destruction of Libya would herald an era of democracy for Libya is simply laughable. Democracy cannot be conjured forth by imperialist invasion and destruction on the point of foreign guns. And I've been proven right in that prediction in the years since the overthrow of the previous Libyan regime. Why we did it? I'm not so sure. I have my views on why President Sarkozy was so involved. If I'm forced to, I'll give them. He is the subject of criminal proceedings at this very moment. As to why David Cameron got involved, as to why Britain and France dragged, and I believe they did drag, the United States administration into full-throated support for one or other brand of Islamist extremism, it's beyond my education. It's beyond my pay grade. The idea that by empowering, supporting, arming, financing one strain of Islamist fanaticism or another, or more than one at the same time, the logic of that simply defies belief for me. I give just one last observation that might not be known to all of the international audience. There was a group called the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, the clue was in the name, that were cosseted by the British state and encouraged to go and live en masse in Manchester. I knew them. I knew them quite well. One of their sons blew up in a suicide mission, the Manchester Arena, during an Ariana Grande concert, and I was merely a few hundred yards away from the venue when the explosion occurred. It was mass murder of young children and their mothers mainly, and fathers in one or two cases too. It was done by a son of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, a group sponsored by the British government, sent to fight in Libya by the British government, allowed to move back and forward between Britain and Libya by the British government. Some called it a liberation. I say that the gates of hell were opened by the British government and the NATO governments in the destruction of Libya.